So my name is Diane Ressler. I'm the crisis counselor for Idaho Families, which is the North Idaho chapter of Safe Families for Children. I am a trophy of God's grace. I know that our God takes broken people and makes them whole again. I know that He can bring beauty from ashes, that He can change our mourning into gladness. I know that He can free us from all of our fears and that He places the lonely in families. I know this because that is exactly what He's done for me. I grew up in poverty, and much of the time we did not know where or how our most basic needs would be met or where our next meal would come from. People in our community understood that we were poor, and many times we would find boxes of clothing out on our doorstep. We would go through these boxes of clothing and find things that would fit, stuff maybe newspaper in the shoes, that kind of thing. Many times we would find boxes of groceries out on our doorstep, and that would get us through the next week. Early on, both of my parents were hospitalized at different times for extended periods of time with what doctors called a nervous breakdown. My dad was an alcoholic, and when he was drinking, he was a very angry man. So verbal, physical, and emotional abuse was common in our household. Fear dominated my mom's life. She was afraid of the fighting. She was afraid of being alone. She was afraid of how she was going to feed and clothe her kids. She was afraid of the future. She just lived in fear. Well, fear also controlled my life. I was afraid of nearly everything, and I felt abandoned and alone. Then in my early teens, the sexual abuse by my dad began. Consequently, by the age of 14, I began doing the very things that I had judged my dad for. I began to abuse alcohol and drugs. So by the time that I was just barely 16, I left home. I was married when I was barely 17, and I was divorced at 18. At 18, I also had what doctors called a nervous breakdown. And basically what that looked like was that fear, depression, and severe panic attacks dominated my life for the next 3 or 4 years. But at the beginning of this dark season of my life, God placed me in a safe family. So the stepmom of the man that I was married to, Anne was her name, brought me into her home, and she loved me back to life. She was steady when I was falling apart. She spoke truth and life into me continually and gave me a vision and a hope for my future when all I knew was despair. She walked me through the darkest season of my life, and it was her steadfast, committed love shown at the worst time in my life. I was a basket case. I had nothing to offer. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't perform. That slowly began to birth hope in me. Her loving care for me saved my life. What Anne did for me is what Safe Families for Children seeks to do in our broken world where families are falling apart in record numbers. Safe Families for Children offers numerous ways of helping and serving families that are in crisis. From opening up our homes to children that are at risk, to helping parents get the practical resources or the spiritual help they need, to providing respite, help for families hosting children. There are so many ways we, as God's people, can get involved and make a difference. God calls us, His people, to love and serve people with the same love we have received from Him. Safe Families for Children was the perfect place for me to give back. Anne had no formal training in counseling nor in how to help a kid with childhood trauma. And in fact, that is not what was needed. But what was needed was a genuine, loving human connection. She had a heart that cared, and the reality of that type of committed love was what my broken spirit was crying out for. We do not need titles or degrees to meet the needs of the desperate all around us. What we do need is a heart motivated by love and a willingness to say, "Here am I, use me. Let me be a tangible expression of your love to someone in need." Jesus said if we give even a cup of cold water in His name, we will not lose our reward. What do you have in your hand to give? You need to know that it is enough, and it will make an eternal difference in the life of someone. God hears the cry of the oppressed. Will you be His answer?